A mountain forest attacked two poachers. Vines snapped from the ground and wrapped around their legs. Boars charged from between the trees. Snakes dropped from branches. The entire ecosystem declared war on the men. They thought stealing mushrooms would be an easy task. A baby deer wagged its tail and dragged a strange root from the dirt. That root was worth 100 million won. This tiny fawn uncovered an incredible fortune in the middle of nowhere. This amount of money could change a life forever. An ancient druid opened his eyes for the first time in a new life. He was a legendary mage in his previous world. Now he lived inside a 370-pound body. The previous owner had just suffered a heart attack. This was not the transformation the druid expected. A toxic coworker entered a hospital room. She wanted to guilt-trip her favorite office target. She planned to give a dying man her own workload. Instead, she received a cold and quiet rejection. An old man with a shotgun aimed at a baby deer. He was ready to pull the trigger. However, our main character shoved the barrel down. He knew the deer was not dinner. The animal was part of his family. Seeds hit the soil. The druid whispered quietly. Within seconds, an entire farm exploded from the ground. Tomatoes and peppers grew into full vegetables within minutes. An abandoned cat sat in a cage and refused to eat. The animal felt broken and heartbroken. Then a massive man sat nearby and radiated warmth. The cat finally lifted her head and began to eat. All of this began with one man. A legendary druid was stuck in a body that could barely climb stairs. He ran from an office job in Seoul to a farmhouse on Mount Baiko. There, he built a cozy and powerful rural life. The story started with the sound of beeping. Fluorescent lights flickered above. The hospital smelled strongly of chemicals. The man opened his eyes. This man was an ancient druid named Theophil. In his past life, he was a feared nature mage. Rivers and forests listened to his commands. Wolves ran alongside him. Now he stared at a ceiling in Seoul. His chest felt heavy, as if a truck parked on it. Memories flooded his mind. These memories belonged to the original owner of the body. The man was named Kang Se-hen. He was 28 years old and worked as a corporate employee. Kang was a person who never said no to others. This habit made him a target for exploitation. Theophil watched the highlights of this depressing life. Kang took on extra work for a coworker. He stayed up all night fixing her mistakes. Then he watched her take all the credit. Kang spent 3 months on a single project. He lived on convenience store rice balls and slept under his desk. His manager stole the credit and received a promotion. Kang woke up alone with chest pain but still went to work. Eventually, Kang collapsed at his desk when his heart failed. That was the moment Theophil arrived. The druid felt furious for the man who died. Kang had worked himself to death because he could not say no. Theophil tried to sit up in the hospital bed. The bed groaned under his weight. He realized his new body weighed 168 kilograms. This was equal to 370 pounds of neglected health. The druid used to leap across canyons and outrun wolves. Now he lived in a body that struggled to reach a television remote. He almost laughed at the situation. Then he realized the gravity of his problem. Theophil needed natural energy to survive. Druids rely on the life force of forests and rivers. In a concrete city like Seoul, there was no nature. He felt his magic reserves running low. He needed to find a green space quickly. If a druid runs out of energy, they die permanently. He created a plan to survive. First, he needed to lose weight to protect his heart. Second, he needed to start exercising immediately. Third, he had to leave the city for a forest. His magic needed nature to breathe. Fourth, he had to quit the job that killed the original owner. A young man rushed into the hospital room. He was tall and handsome, but his face was red from crying. He grabbed the hand of the man in the bed. This was the younger brother of Kang, named Siu. Siu was the only family Kang had left. Siu was a famous music idol. He belonged to a popular group called Tracker. Despite his fame, he was just a worried brother. Seiyu cried and blamed himself for not visiting. The druid felt a connection to the boy through the memories of Kang. He realized the boy needed him. Theophil decided to be the big brother Seiyu required. He squeezed the hand of the younger man. He promised he was not going anywhere. Then he announced his big changes. He was quitting his job and moving to the countryside. Seiyu panicked at the news. He worried about his brother living alone in the rural mountains. He asked how Kang would eat or stay safe. Then Siu had a brilliant idea. He suggested that Kang start a video channel. Kang could record his farming and cooking. This would allow Siu to check on him daily. If no video appeared, Siu would know something was wrong. Kang agreed to the plan. He would make a quiet channel focusing on his garden and kitchen. The mood in the room improved instantly. Then the coworker entered the room. Theophil recognized the woman from his memories. She was the person who gave Kang all her tasks. She stole his labor for years. She entered with a coffee and a fake smile. The woman claimed the whole team missed Kang. Then she asked him to look at a report on her laptop. She wanted him to work while he was in a hospital bed. Theophil saw through her manipulation immediately. He did not yell or lose his temper. He softly told her no. Then he explained he was done fixing her mistakes. He told her he was leaving the company and her life. The woman tried to pressure him again. She used the excuse of being a team. Kang did not move. He asked Seiyu to escort the woman out of the room. Seiyu happily opened the door for her. The woman was angry but could not argue in front of a famous idol. She forced a smile and left. Kang felt a great sense of relief. Weeks passed while Kang recovered. He learned how to live in the modern world. He studied cooking and learned how to use a mobile phone. He also practiced breathing to save his magic. By the time he left the hospital, he lost 20 kilograms. He achieved this through discipline and walking. Doctors were surprised by his progress. Kang remained focused on his mission. Kang chose a small village on Mount Baiko. The location was deep in nature but near a town for supplies. He found an old farmhouse that was empty for years. This was the perfect place for a druid. So tried every angle to help his brother. He offered to rent a nicer place closer to Seoul. He even offered to buy a fully renovated cabin. So suggested having his manager handle the entire move. This was a classic move for a younger brother. Kang smiled and declined the help. He wanted to handle the move himself because he needed the independence. Seiyu sighed at the response. Then, he quietly made several phone calls without telling his brother. This behavior reflected his protective nature. Move-in day arrived eventually. The house was in poor condition and needed significant work. To be honest, it was a complete mess. The wood was warped in 3 different places. A small and fluffy animal lived under the porch. Kang chose not to investigate the creature yet. Weeds in the yard were tall enough to reach his waist. The kitchen featured only one working burner. An old well out back might still function. The ancient druid looked at the disaster and grinned. For the first time since leaving the hospital, he felt a familiar sensation. He felt a gentle and alive humming pressure of natural energy. The feeling was faint but noticeable. People like loggers and hunters had used this mountain recently. Consequently, the natural energy remained thin. However, the energy was definitely present. After weeks in Seoul, he finally felt like he could breathe again. He dropped his bag on the porch and began working. His first mission involved clearing the yard. He rolled up his sleeves and grabbed a rusty hoe. Then, he started hacking through the thick weeds. This moment revealed something important about his character. He did not intend to rely solely on magic. Instead, he committed himself to hard physical labor. He hacked at the weeds and raked the ground. He dragged giant piles of dry brush to a burn pit. He eventually sweated through 2 shirts. The physical ache in his shoulders felt like medicine. This work healed both his body and his soul. While he was working, he heard a sound behind him. He heard a cough followed by a gruff voice. A man asked if he was the fool who bought the house. Kang turned around to see a wiry old man. The neighbor appeared to be in his 70s and wore a hunting vest. He carried a shotgun over his shoulder with ease. His face looked like it was carved from tree bark. He did not look impressed by Kang. This man was Jeong, the neighbor. Jeong acted like a grumpy person with a kind heart. Every word from his mouth sounded like a jab. However, his actions were quietly and secretly kind. He suggested that Kang could not survive 1 week in the mountains. He told Kang that the house was falling apart. He mentioned that the well was very finicky. He claimed that city boys always ran away during cold weather. Kang calmly thanked the man for his warning. Jeong squinted at him because he expected a different response. Then, Jeong coughed again with a deep and rattling sound. The druid immediately noticed the tightness in the old man's chest. Kang did not say anything about the cough yet. Instead, he asked Jeong for directions to the town. He needed to buy seeds but did not know the roads. Jeong grumbled as if he were personally insulted. Despite his grumbling, he agreed to help the young man. They headed to the market together. During the trip, Zhang taught Kang about country life. He explained where to buy the best fertilizer. He pointed out which vendors might overcharge him. He identified which pumpkins had the best flavor. He also shared advice on late-season planting. Zhang complained the entire time they were out. Nevertheless, he carefully ensured that Kang bought the correct supplies. At the seed shop, Kang bought a large variety of seeds. He selected tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, and various herbs. He also chose root vegetables and squash. The shopkeeper was surprised, because the season was nearly over. Zhang told him that the plants would not grow now. Kang simply smiled and said he wanted to try. Zhang muttered about wasted money and walked outside. The druid was not worried because he had a plan. They headed back up the mountain together. Kang carried the heavy bags in one hand. Zhang warned him about wild boars and heavy rain. During the walk, Kang casually brushed his fingers against Zhang's shoulder. An invisible thread of green energy moved into the man's chest. By the time they reached the fence, Zhang had not coughed. The old man paused and blinked in surprise. He placed a hand on his chest. He felt that the irritation had finally quieted down. He grumbled about young people and walked home. Kang smiled up at the sky. This was his second small victory. His grumpy neighbor would sleep better tonight. The old man would not even know the reason why. Now, Kang prepared for the most important part. Alone in the yard, the druid rolled his shoulders. He knelt in the dirt and pressed his palms flat. He closed his eyes and whispered an ancient word. This word came from a world without modern technology. Suddenly, the ground began to shiver. The seeds in the rows started to hum. Tiny green shoots poked up through the dirt. Leaves and stalks followed quickly. The entire garden exploded upward in a wave of green. Tomato vines appeared with ripe red fruit. Peppers grew glossy and firm. Lettuce leaves opened like beautiful flowers. Within minutes, Kang stood in a fully grown farm. He grinned and wiped dirt off his cheek. The mountain seemed to hum back at him. Then, he heard a rustle from the tree line. Something small and scared was hiding there. The druid turned toward the sound. He realized the animal was injured. Kang stepped toward the trees despite his heavy frame. He never ignored a hurt animal in any life. He pushed past a low branch and found a fawn. The tiny water deer had big black eyes. One of its spindly legs was caught in a trap. The little fawn was trembling with fear. There was blood on its leg. The animal struggled when it saw the massive man. Kang felt a deep sadness for the creature. He dropped slowly to his knees. His large body made this movement quite difficult. He eventually reached the ground on all four limbs. Then, he began to hum a soft tune. This was an ancient druid sound. The sound wrapped around the fawn like a blanket. The trembling slowed down. The fawn moved its ears toward him. Kang scooted closer and talked gently to the animal. He spoke in the tone of an experienced caretaker. He hovered his palm over the metal trap. Then, he pushed green energy into the rusted joint. The metal teeth loosened. He pried the trap open and freed the leg. The fawn remained still and watched him. Kang noticed a nasty gash on the limb. He placed his palm over the injury. He pushed more energy into the wound. He felt the bone knitting together. The skin sealed and the pain faded away. Soon, the fawn stood up on four legs. It nudged his hand with its nose. The druid had gained a new companion. He gently scooped the little animal up. It weighed almost nothing and did not flinch. The fawn tucked its head into his arm. He walked back to the house. He set up a soft corner on the porch. He provided water and an old blanket. He named the fawn Bambi. The creature curled up and fell asleep immediately. Kang stood there and grinned at his new roommate. The next few days settled into a rhythm. Kang woke up early to exercise in the yard. Later, he cooked simple meals. He used rice and vegetables from his garden. He ate slowly and drank plenty of water. Then, he began to film his activities. He created a video blog without showing his face. He filmed his hands and the kitchen counter. He captured the garden and the bubbling stove. The videos featured the mountain fog and chopping sounds. There was no talking and no music. He edited the footage on his new laptop. He uploaded the videos to a new channel. At first, nobody watched his content. One video received only 12 views. Half of those views came from his own checks. Then, the situation changed. Viewers commented on the beautiful vegetables. Others noticed the tiny deer in the background. People noticed his hands looked healthier. The internet began an investigation into his identity. Consequently, The views on his channel exploded. Kang did not notice the online fame. He was busy fixing a leak in his roof. Eventually, the village chief arrived. Her name was Stella. She was a sharp woman with silver hair. She wore expensive and tasteful clothes. Stella ran the village with an iron spine. She was very wealthy but remained humble. She protected the village from dishonest developers. She arrived at the yard in a clean vehicle. Stella took a long look around the property. Her eyes landed on the lush garden. The plants were bursting with ripe fruit. This was unusual for the current season. Kang walked over and greeted her politely. Stella introduced herself as the village chief. She welcomed him to the area. Then, she asked about the fertilizer he used. Kang claimed he simply had a good touch. Stella smiled and did not push for more information. She gave him a basket of eggs as a gift. Then, she mentioned a delivery coming from Seoul. She explained that his brother had arranged it. Kang was confused by the news. The next morning, a large truck arrived. Workers began unloading materials for a greenhouse. Kang stared at the massive delivery in surprise. His younger brother had made several phone calls. He contacted a company that sponsored his music group. They sent a professional greenhouse as a gift. The donation was kept quiet and away from the press. The workers set up the big arched greenhouse in a single day. This structure provided enough space for a small forest of plants. It featured full ventilation and proper irrigation hookups. Kang felt stunned by the final results. That night, Kang called his brother to shout at him. So answered the phone with a wide grin. He mentioned that he was merely protecting his investment in the video blog. So also expressed how proud he was that his older brother lived well. So asked if Kang had checked the latest video statistics. Kang opened the channel and saw millions of views. His mouth dropped open in disbelief at the numbers. He then caught his reflection in the mirror on the wall. Kang noticed that he had lost more weight. He weighed 129 kilograms now. He was still quite large. However, a jawline and broader shoulders were finally emerging. He looked like a new man appearing from an exhausted shell. Kang grinned at his own reflection for the first time. Sehyu heard the change in his voice and started crying. The brother quickly insisted he was not crying. He blamed allergies before hanging up the phone. The peaceful mountain life faced a sudden test. A grumpy old man named Jung spotted a brown and white shape at dawn. Jung carried a shotgun as he walked through his yard. He saw a young deer nibbling on wild grass. To the old hunter, the deer was merely a garden thief. He shouldered his weapon and prepared to fire. Suddenly, a massive shape blocked his line of fire. Kang sprinted through the yard and planted himself before the barrel. Kang shoved the gun barrel toward the ground. He doubled over while gasping for air. Jaeyoung started shouting about the danger of the situation. Kang pointed behind him and claimed the fawn as his pet. Bambi heard the voice of the druid and trotted out from the bushes. The deer rubbed its head against the leg of the man. Jaeyoung stared in complete disbelief at the scene. He asked why a wild animal would act so tame. Kang explained that he had cared for the injured animal. Jung muttered something rude and stomped away toward his home. Peace returned to the mountain for the time being. Kang smiled as the fawn wagged its small tail. A shiny black van rolled up to the house that afternoon. So stepped out wearing a large hoodie and a mask. His manager followed him out of the vehicle. The manager looked extremely tired from a long week of work. The group walked toward the peeling walls of the house. So froze when he saw the sagging floors and messy porch. He asked his brother if he was punishing himself. Kang laughed and pulled his younger brother into a warm hug. The manager walked through the front room and looked at the wooden beams. He saw the small altar and the sunlight through the paper screens. Suddenly, the grown man began to cry silently. He said the home reminded him of his grandmother. The manager stepped outside to compose himself. So insisted on fixing the hole in the roof and the kitchen. Kang eventually agreed to a few simple repairs. However, So secretly planned a much larger project for the home. So hired the best carpenter in the region for a full renovation. He ordered a new roof, a kitchen, and reinforced beams. The workers would complete the project while Kang was away. This work would preserve the traditional look of the house. Kang felt a pull toward a specific spot on the mountain. He hiked to the top on a crisp morning with the fawn. There he found an ancient pine tree with a massive trunk. 5 men could not fit their arms around the bark. Kang pressed his forehead against the bark and began the ritual. In his old life, this pact allowed druids to bond with nature. His senses would eventually stretch through every root and leaf. He poured his energy respectfully into the ancient tree. The pine tree hummed with a deep vibration. The needles rippled even though the air remained still. Every animal on the mountain felt a kind presence settle into the forest. Kang finally felt truly at home in this new world. The next morning, the village chief named Stella called with a problem. Her favorite rare orchid was dying. The leaves turned yellow and the roots were rotting. She asked if Kang could use his skills to save the plant. Kang drove to the house and examined the wilted orchid. He pushed a delicate thread of energy into the soil. A new green shoot appeared as the yellow leaves brightened. Stella gasped as the plant recovered in real time. Stella handed Kang an envelope containing 5 million won. Kang tried to refuse the large payment. However, the village chief insisted that he accept the money. Kang decided to return the favor with a special druid wine. Later that day, the fawn led Kang into a shaded patch of forest. The animal started digging at the ground with its hoof. Kang watched as the creature pulled a twisted root from the earth. He realized it was a massive wild ginseng root. This specific root was rare and extremely valuable. Kang kissed the head of the fawn and thanked his small companion. He wrapped the ginseng carefully and drove back to see Stella. The village chief looked at the find with a quiet expression. Stella picked up her phone. She made one call. Then she made another. Finally, she made a third call. Within 2 hours, a serious man in an expensive suit arrived. He sat in her tea room. He examined the root with a jeweler lens. Soon, a second expert arrived. Then a third expert joined them. The experts conferred together. They made an offer. Stella negotiated the terms. By the end of the afternoon, the deal was complete. Kang walked out with a sale price of nearly 100 million won. This was a fortune for a man who recently collapsed at an office desk. He stood on the porch and blinked at the sky. He tried to process the event. Bambi headbutted his leg. Kang looked down at her. He told his companion they needed to talk about a raise. Bambi wagged her tiny tail. High on the mountain, Kang felt a change. He felt it through the deep roots of the orange tree. He felt it through the leaves of every connected pine. 2 men were sneaking up his slope. The men stepped on the leaves. Their breath was nervous. They carried cheap flashlights. Sacks were slung over their shoulders. They scanned the ground for a specific kind of fungus. Poachers had arrived. Kang's smile faded. He glanced up at the mountain. Deep in the roots, the ancient pine hummed. Let us talk about these 2 men for a moment. Their names were Yu and his sidekick. Yu was the supposed brains of the operation. The sidekick provided the muscle. They had heard a rumor about the city guy on Mount Baiko. They heard about a fancy video log and a rich brother. They thought the mountain was an unlocked pantry. The men were looking for matsutake mushrooms. These mushrooms grow in old pine forests. They are extremely difficult to farm. A single high-grade mushroom can sell for a lot of money. This profit motivated the 2 thieves. Yu wore a headlamp. His sidekick carried a large sack. They crept up the slope. Meanwhile, Kang stood barefoot in his yard. He kept his eyes half closed. He rested one hand against the porch post. Kang saw the whole scene through the roots. He heard every crunch of their boots. He heard every whisper. He felt their greedy grins when they spotted the mushrooms. Kang exhaled slowly. He believed in politeness first. He mentally nudged the mountain. He sent a small warning. A gust of wind blew through the branches. The undergrowth rustled loudly. Every animal on the slope shifted. A crow croaked deliberately above the head of Yu. Yu froze for a second. Then he shrugged and reached for the mushrooms anyway. This was a big mistake. The sidekick pulled out a plastic sack. He started scooping the mushrooms. He ripped them out by the roots. This action was pure vandalism. Usually, people leave the roots so the mushrooms grow next year. These men stripped the whole patch like locusts. Kang set his jaw. He realized they had tried to be polite. His eyes flashed green for a moment. Then they returned to normal. The mountain answered his call. First, the vines began to move. A long wisteria vine uncoiled across the forest floor. It slid toward the ankle of Yu. Yu did not notice because he was busy stuffing the sack. Then the vine grabbed him. Yu shrieked loudly. His leg was yanked out from under him. He slapped face first into the dirt. The sack flew through the air. Mushrooms scattered everywhere. The sidekick spun around in confusion. Then a wild boar appeared. On the mountain of Kang, the wildlife always responded to his requests. A large and muddy boar crashed through the brush. The boar had tusks like curved knives. It did not gore anyone. Instead, it stood there and snorted steam. The boar gave the sidekick a very direct look. The sidekick became extremely terrified. Then the snakes appeared. They were not deadly, they were simply present. A dozen snakes slithered out of the undergrowth. The snakes watched the men. Yu was on his back with a vine around his leg. He tried to crawl away. The sidekick was frozen by the breath of the boar. Above them, a tribe of magpies landed on the branches. They cackled at the thieves. Finally, Kang walked up the slope. He was still huffing from the climb. He was a large man hauling a heavy body up a hill. He stood in the flickering moonlight. The giant pines silhouetted his figure. An entire ecosystem waited for his orders. He looked like a nature god. Kang looked down at the two thieves. He asked if the gentlemen were lost. Yu tried to answer, but it was only a squeak. The vines tightened around his leg. Kang crouched down and picked up the fallen sack. He looked at the ruined mushroom patch. He was not truly angry, he was disappointed. That feeling was much worse. He told them quietly that this mountain was his home. These mushrooms took decades to grow. The men had wrecked something that did not belong to them. The sidekick started sobbing. Yu tried to bargain for a share of the profit. He suggested 50-50 or 70-30. Kang raised an eyebrow at the boar. The boar took a deliberate step forward. Yu stopped the negotiation immediately. Kang stood up and pulled out his phone. He called Stella first. Stella knew how to handle any situation. Then he called the police. Finally, he called Father Matt from the neighboring monastery. They waited for 20 minutes. Headlights soon bounced up the mountain trail. The police arrived first. Stella arrived next because she never missed a moment. Father Matt followed in his large robe. He looked concerned. The vines retreated as the officers arrived. The boar and the snakes vanished into the woods. By the time the police arrived, the scene looked different. Two men were tangled in regular brush. They were shaking with fear for unknown reasons. The officers saw the stripped mushroom patch. They saw the sack of stolen goods. They decided that was enough evidence. Yu tried to tell a story about living vines. The officer stared at him for a long moment. He asked if the man had been drinking. Yu sighed and put his wrists together. Father Matt watched them get into the car. The priest thanked Kang for handling the matter peacefully. Kang smiled and said that peace was the goal. Behind him, the great pine hummed with satisfaction. The mountain had protected itself. Stella walked Kang back down the slope. She mentioned a specialty buyer for the salvaged mushrooms. These mushrooms could be salvaged properly. Stella knew the buyer personally. Kang laughed and called her dangerous. She simply winked at him. It was very late when he got home. Bambi was waiting on the porch. He scratched her ears and went to bed. 1 week later, life on the mountain continued. Something had been building behind the scenes. His brother Siu had lied about the repairs. He was never going to do a simple roof patch. He hired the best carpenter in the region. He gave the carpenter a blank check. He wanted the traditional charm preserved. However, he wanted everything else fixed. The work happened while Kang was away. Stella asked Kang to stay at her house for a few nights. She mentioned rare seeds and a comfortable mattress. Kang was suspicious but agreed to go. He packed a small bag. He kissed the head of Bambi. He trusted the mountain to watch his home. As soon as he left, a crew of workers arrived. 4 days later, Kang drove back home. He rounded the last bend and stopped the car. The house he left was a charming disaster. The house he returned to was a dream. The old traditional style remained. It had the same roof lines and wooden feel. The paper screens and porch were still there. It looked like his house after a visit to a spa. The roof was perfect without any warped shingles. The kitchen had a beautiful new stove. It featured real countertops and a new sink. The floor was made of warm honeyed wood. The walls were insulated and hidden behind screens. A brand new bathroom looked like it came from a traditional inn. There was a new well pump. There was even a guest room for his brother. Kang walked inside and stayed silent for a long time. Then he called his brother. Seiyu was already laughing on the other end. Kang tried to be stern. He reminded his brother of their agreement. Seiyu said that nodding was not a legal contract. Kang laughed and called his brother a menace. He thanked him sincerely. Selth went quiet for a moment. He said he just wanted his brother to be happy. Kang looked around his new home. He felt the warmth of the wood. He smelled the fresh cedar. He heard the hooves of Bambi on the porch. He felt the mountain humming through the floor. He told his brother that he was happy. Seo made a noise like he was trying not to cry. He hung up the phone quickly. Kang knew he was crying into a pillow. Now, it was time for the tomato dinner. Kang owed a debt to Stella. She had sold his ginseng and helped with the renovation. He invited her and Jong over for a meal. He claimed it would be nothing fancy. This was another lie. As a druid, he always made special food. He went into the greenhouse. He picked the ripest red tomatoes. He picked fresh basil and garlic. He used stone-milled flour and fresh eggs. He added good olive oil and a flake of salt. He prepared handmade pasta and fresh sauce. He made a green salad with wildflower petals. He prepared bruschetta with garden tomatoes on toasted bread. Now, watch him cook. Kang rolled the dough by hand. His forearms looked different now. They were softer yet held real strength. He cut the noodles with a knife. Then he set a pot of water to boil. He chopped the tomatoes roughly. He warmed oil and garlic in a heavy pan. He slid the tomatoes inside. The pan sizzled as steam curled up. He tore basil leaves with his hands and dropped them on top. Somewhere in the process, he whispered a tiny druid word into the pan. He did this without moving his mouth or making a gesture. The tomatoes brightened and the oil turned gold. A wonderful scent filled the room. It was overwhelmingly delicious. Anyone within 30 feet of the kitchen became a hostage to the aroma. Bambi the deer wandered in and sniffed the air. She looked at Kang with betrayed eyes. Kang hand-fed the deer a piece of tomato bread. Bambi forgave him immediately. She was easy to please in that way. Stella and Jung arrived right on time. Jung grumbled before he even entered the house. He claimed he was only there because Stella insisted. He muttered that city boys could not cook. He also mentioned that he did not like fancy food. Kang set the plate down in front of Jung. The fresh pasta featured a sauce so red it glowed. Basil leaves looked like little green flags. A rich topping was grated over the dish. Jung took a bite and closed his eyes. Nobody said anything for 10 full seconds. When Jung opened his eyes, they were suspiciously shiny. He cleared his throat and said the food was decent. Then he took another bite and a third. He tried to play it cool by eating slowly. However, he failed and began inhaling the pasta. Stella watched him and laughed before taking her own bite. She smiled as if she had experienced something divine. She whispered that it was the best tomato she had ever eaten. Kang smiled and said he was glad they came. Jung avoided eye contact and spoke in a small voice. He mentioned that he had not coughed in weeks. Kang glanced at him casually and said that was good news. Jung nodded but still did not look up. He said he did not know why his health improved. However, he slept better and could walk up the hill without stopping. He thanked Kang for being a good neighbor. Kang felt his throat tighten and nodded. Stella watched the exchange with a fond smile. The group finished dinner and drank tea. Jong fell asleep while sitting up on the porch. Stella noted that this was his favorite hobby. Kang covered the old man with a blanket. Bambi lay down next to Jong's feet. That night, Kang stood in the yard looking at the mountain. He thought about his strange new life. Despite the unexpected body, he felt truly happy. Then the rain began to fall. It started as a light patter but grew heavier. Soon, the sky opened up completely. Monsoon season on Mount Baiko was a serious event. This was not a light drizzle. The rain became so thick that visibility vanished. Thunder rattled the house beams. Water flowed down the mountain in heavy rivers. Kang stood on his new porch and grinned. The new roof handled the storm beautifully. Not a single drip entered the house. Stella headed home during a lull in the rain. Jong shuffled off through the mud in his raincoat. The rain continued for several days. During monsoons, the mountain village residents hunkered down. They checked their roofs and moved their livestock. Everyone watched the rising streams. The village also held community meetings. These gatherings helped the residents coordinate their efforts. Kang received a text message from Stella. She invited him to a village meeting that night. She suggested he bring food if he wanted. She included a smiling face icon in the message. Kang grabbed the salvaged mushrooms he had carefully dried. He turned them into a large pot of rice. The rich broth was enough for the whole village. The meeting hall was packed with families and children. Elderly residents and loud uncles filled the room. Kang walked in carrying his massive pot. The entire room turned and inhaled the scent. He became the most popular person within 90 seconds. Everyone received a scoop of the delicious rice. The villagers expressed their joy as they ate. An old woman asked about his identity. Someone identified him as the video creator. Another person asked if he was the brother of the idol Seu. Kang smiled politely and continued to serve the food. No one caught his face on camera. He remained a mystery to the online world. In the village, he simply wanted to be a neighbor. Stella managed the meeting like a military general. She discussed flooding roads and weakening bridges. She assigned people to check on elderly neighbors. Everyone received a specific task to complete. Kang volunteered for any work requiring physical strength. His body was stronger than most of the local men. Suddenly, a phone began to ring. It was Jung's phone. He listened for a moment and stood up quickly. His stool clattered onto the floor. His face turned pale as everyone watched him. He turned to Kang and mentioned his cow. Kang did not ask any questions. He grabbed his coat and they ran outside. Jung ran quickly while Kang followed as fast as possible. He was moving much faster than in the past. Rain slammed sideways into their faces as they moved. Mud sucked at their shoes during the trek. Thunder cracked somewhere high up the mountain. Jung muttered worriedly the entire way. He explained that his pregnant cow had collapsed. The stress of the storm was too much. She was on her side and struggling to breathe. If they lost her, the calf would die too. The veterinarian was coming, but the roads were flooded. Jung did not know when help would arrive. They burst into the barn and found a dire scene. The cow lay in the straw with wild eyes. Her chest heaved in panicked bursts of breath. Her entire body trembled with fear. Jung knelt beside her and whispered her name. Kang stepped forward and knelt down as well. He placed a large hand gently on her shoulder. Then he began to hum. He used the same tone he used for Bambi. It was a low and soft sound. The cow rolled her eyes toward him and snorted. He continued his steady humming. Eventually, the animal's breathing began to slow. He gently stroked her neck and whispered reassurances. He told her she was safe in a deep language. He promised that her baby was also safe. He said the storm would soon pass. He assured her that she was not alone. Her trembling stopped and her breath deepened. The panic left her eyes as she calmed down. Jung watched the scene with his mouth open in surprise. The barn door banged open behind them. A young man in a soaked raincoat stumbled inside. This was Hugh, the village veterinarian. He had kind eyes and was dripping wet. He expected an emergency and total chaos. Instead, he saw a giant man humming to a cow. The cow seemed as relaxed as if she were at a spa. Hugh stopped and blinked in confusion. Kang looked up and smiled calmly. He explained he was not a veterinarian. He had only tried to keep the animal calm. Hugh knelt on the other side of the cow. He checked her heartbeat and her breathing. He examined her belly and looked up in shock. He said the cow was stable and fine. He told Kang to keep doing whatever he was doing. Kang continued humming while Hugh performed his duties. Together, they helped the cow through the storm. By dawn, the cow was standing and eating hay. Jung sat on a hay bale and cried quietly. Hugh packed his kit and glanced at Kang. He was fascinated by what he had seen. He asked if Kang had formal training. He noted that the calming technique was professional. Kang shrugged and said he grew up around animals. Hugh did not fully believe the explanation. However, he smiled and offered his hand. He said he would like to be friends. Kang shook his hand and agreed. This was a significant moment for the druid. He had been alone in many ways. Siyu was his family, and Jung was like an uncle. Stella served as a mentor. But he had no friends his own age. Hugh represented the start of a new friendship. They walked out of the barn into the morning light. The rain had finally slowed down. Water dripped from every leaf on the mountain. The air smelled like wet earth and greenery. Kang walked home completely soaked. His heavy clothes weighed an extra 5 kilograms. He did not care and kept grinning. He stepped into his yard and saw Bambi. She was angry that he left her during the storm. He apologized and she forgave him for some bread. He entered the greenhouse to check the plants. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks. A skinny mother cat was curled in the straw. 4 tiny kittens blinked up at him. They were only a few days old. The cats had found shelter during the storm. They chose the warmest place in the greenhouse. Kang crouched down slowly to avoid scaring them. He sat on the floor and let them watch him. The mother cat looked completely exhausted. Her ribs were visible from a lack of food. Her babies were quiet and worn out. Kang got up and walked into the house. He prepared warm milk and leftover fish. He returned and set the food near her. The cat watched him with a cautious stare. Finally, she began to eat quickly. She then nuzzled her tiny kittens. Kang smiled and pulled out his phone. He called Hugh to report a new situation. He told the vet the cow was doing great. He explained about the mother cat and 4 kittens. Hugh laughed and told Kang to come to the clinic. Kang carefully placed the cats into a soft basket. He carried them out to his car. Bambi rode in the front seat and looked offended. She did not like the presence of the kittens. However, she only huffed and did nothing else. Kang drove down to the clinic in town. The building was small with a wooden sign. Inside, the air was warm and inviting. Hugh took the basket and checked the mother cat. He said she was dehydrated and underweight. She would recover with a week of proper care. The kittens were tired and cold, but healthy. Kang breathed a sigh of relief. Kang sat in the waiting room during the exam. He noticed another cat in a corner kennel. This cat was clearly not doing well. The young tabby huddled at the back of her cage. Her eyes looked completely empty and sad. Hugh returned and followed the gaze of his friend. He sighed and explained the cat's tragic history. She was previously a pet for a young family. They moved away and abandoned her at a shelter. Eventually, the shelter left her at the clinic. The cat had not eaten in 5 days. She simply stared at the wall in silence. Hugh had tried every kind of food and toy. He feared she would give up by tomorrow. Kang looked at the sad animal. He walked over and knelt in front of the kennel. He did not reach in or speak. He simply sat there in silence. He let his quiet druid warmth spill out. It was not exactly magic. It was simply his presence. That ancient druid steadiness suggested it was okay to feel sad. He let her know that she was allowed to feel this way. He offered a warm presence beside her. He told her to take her time. The cat did not look at him at first. After 1 minute, she finally looked at him. After another minute, the cat blinked. She slowly stood up. Kang did not move. The cat walked on shaky legs to the front of the kennel. She pressed her forehead against the metal bars. She rested her head there for a moment. Kang remained still as he gently opened the kennel latch. He offered his open palm to her. She sniffed his hand. Then, she started to purr very quietly. Hugh stood behind him and covered his mouth with both hands. Kang scratched her chin gently. He spoke in a very soft voice. He told her that people are not all the same. He said that some people stay. He told her that she was allowed to eat again. He stood up and walked to the food shelf. He warmed a small dish of wet food for her. He brought the dish back and set it in front of her. The cat began to eat. She did not eat much, but she ate. Hugh was crying openly now. He made no effort to hide his emotions. He held onto the doorframe while he cried. He said out loud that he planned to adopt her. He declared that he would not let her go anywhere else. He claimed the cat belonged to him now. Kang smiled and said that sounded right. He gave her one last scratch on the chin before standing up. The mother cat and her kittens went home with Kang for now. The clinic belonging to Hugh was packed with animals. Kang had a greenhouse that was essentially a 5-star hotel. He was officially running a small animal kingdom. He did not seem to mind the extra work. That night, Sue called with a lot of energy. His idol group, Tracker, was finally getting a break in their schedule. He wanted to bring the other members to visit. He wanted to introduce his friends to his brother. Seu wanted them to see the farm. He wanted them to have the full countryside experience. He was already making a group chat about the trip. However, one member named Jerome had a nasty cold. Jerome might not be able to make the trip, so Yu said he would come another time instead. Kang laughed and told him to bring the others. He promised to cook for the whole group. Sovyu squealed like a fan at a concert. They set a date for the visit. The next morning, the rain finally stopped. The sun peeked out from behind the clouds. The mountain began to glow in the light. Bambi ran quickly around the yard. The mother cat napped in the greenhouse. Her kittens lay in a perfect fluffy pile beside her. The garden drank up the rainwater. Kang stretched on the porch and noticed a change. He realized he could see his feet clearly now. He did not have to lean forward to see them. This was a new development for him. He decided that he needed some fresh tofu for the upcoming visit. There was a great little shop in the market. He grabbed a canvas bag for the trip. He whistled for Zhong to come along. Zhong knew everyone and could help get a better price. Zhong grumbled for the entire drive. He acted like he was not happy. In reality, he was very happy to go. That was simply how Zhong operated. They parked at the edge of the market. They walked through the various stalls. Kang waved at a few people he recognized. An older woman with good peppers waved back at him. A man running the fish stall gave him a thumbs up. A little kid pointed at Bambi through the car window. They finally reached the tofu shop. That was when Kang felt something strange. It was not exactly danger. However, something felt wrong. He glanced up to survey the area. A man stood across the little market square. The man was near a stack of crates. He appeared to be in his late 30s or early 40s. The stranger was wiry with a sharp jaw. He wore dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low. He held a cigarette but did not smoke it. He was just watching the square. Kang wondered what he was watching. The man moved his eyes across the square in a specific way. He scanned the area like a police officer might. On the other hand, he might be the opposite of a cop. He tracked a woman holding a purse. He tracked the register at the fish stall. He watched a delivery truck pulling into the market. He noted the routine of an old man. The stranger filed all this information in his head. Kang felt the mountain hum in the back of his mind. The feeling came from high up on the slope. It made him feel uneasy. The shopkeeper was a sweet older woman. She handed Kang his order of tofu. He paid for the food. As she counted the change, she leaned forward. She murmured something quietly to him. She told him to watch that man over there. Kang tilted his head slightly. He did not stare at the stranger. He did not have to stare to see him. The shopkeeper whispered that the man was an ex-gangster. He had moved into the village 2 weeks ago. The man claimed he was retired. He had bought the old house with the blue roof. Nobody had seen him do a normal day of work. He just walked around and watched people. Everyone in the village felt a little nervous. However, nobody wanted to say anything out loud. Kang thanked the woman and took his tofu. He turned around to leave. The man across the square was now looking directly at Kang. He was not being aggressive. He simply looked interested in Kang. Their eyes met for a brief moment. The man tipped his cap slightly. It was almost a polite gesture. Then he turned and walked away. He went down a narrow side alley and disappeared from sight. Zhang had been watching the whole time. Zhang muttered something colorful under his breath. He said he did not like the situation at all. Kang stood in the market square with the tofu. The mountain hummed in his chest. He stared at the mouth of the alley for a long moment. Before this, his biggest threats were health issues and toxic coworkers. He had dealt with mushroom poachers. Those were natural or human problems. Those problems were solvable. However, the look in this man's eyes changed everything. The temperature of the whole village felt different now. Our druid felt a very specific sensation. He was an ancient and powerful healer. He was a farmer and a quiet star. He felt the feeling every hero eventually gets. It told him that a new chapter was beginning. Bambi pressed her nose against the car window. She let out a tiny, worried bleat. Kang walked back to her and ruffled her ears. He slid into the driver's seat of the car. He looked up at his mountain. The slopes were green and glowing above the rooftops. He smiled to himself. He told the world to bring it on.